From 2 packs a day to 20 miles a day, our guest is a race director, cyclist, and completely changed his health. How did he do it? Well, let's dive in.
Welcome back to Bespoke Endurance, episode 9 of Recreational Rider to Racer podcast series, where Josh and I are on this journey to going from recreational riders to racers. Before we get into anything, we want to give a huge shout out to Road ID for not only supporting our podcast, but also letting us film right here at their headquarters. If you're a cyclist, runner, or someone who wants peace of mind while out on the road, Road ID has you covered. Their medical IDs provide crucial info in case of an emergency, and they look great too. Do yourself a favor, check out roadid.com and grab one today. Big thanks to the team at Road ID for their support.
Okay, so our guest today, Gary Bentley, is from Carlisle, Kentucky. He's had 13 years of riding his bike, spent 10 years as a race director, founded KORRS, the Kentucky Open Road Race Series. This is the 3rd year. We're going to definitely get into that. And we're going to link it in the show. But we just want to say, first of all, Gary, welcome to the show.
Thank you all for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on. I got to do a super quick, the first time I met you. And I think this is going to kind of set up this health journey you've been on. So I did one of the KORRS races last year. I did the one that was in October. And everyone that had done it was like, oh, it's a great race. And the race director, he's this super chill guy. He's so cool. And you'll know him when you see him. And I was like, okay. So I go down and you were under the tent and you were wearing this and it was a cold morning. Like it was like 40s. And you were wearing just like a white t-shirt with like a Hawaiian t-shirt over that, just unbuttoned. I was like, okay, this is cool. And we get to the line and you do the normal race director stuff. So you go over the course with us, you go over the neutral start, how you're going to kind of then lead us into when we take off and any crossings, just kind of normal, like here's what to look for out on the course. And we're all lined up, and right as we're about to start, I'm thinking, all right, this is it. You put the microphone down and you reach into your pocket and you just pull out a pack of cigarettes, take one out, take your time and just light it up, take a puff, and then go, okay, we're going to get started now. And then just fire the gun off. And I was like, this is awesome. This is something I've never seen, but I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question for you, the first question is just, you've been known as a guy who smokes and also races, but just start with telling us your story. Like, how did you go from a chain smoker to getting into cycling? Like, just tell us a little bit about that journey, because I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, so I'll be as brief as I can, but grew up punk rock skateboarder kid.
Oh, let's go.
And then got into like racing motocross in my late teens, early 20s. And then I broke my back and through that. And then by that point I was already 29, had a daughter, and I was like, all right, I got to stop. But for my mental health, I needed an activity and just happened to pick up cycling. Some guys I worked with were into mountain biking. And from there, like, once I got into it, I was hooked. And I always tell everybody, regardless of more recent changes, cycling changed my life for the better. More mental health than physical.
Yeah.
Okay.
With some motocross, I got to ask, is that how you broke your back? Like, tell me the story. What happened there? That's not a lot of people break their back. Like, that's great. That's incredible.
At 29, I knew that like I was getting towards the end of being able to race motocross from dislocated shoulders and other broken bones and injuries. But at Rupp Arena in Lexington, they were doing the Arena Cross Championships that year.
Okay.
And I was like, here's my opportunity. Do one big show to end it all. Now, granted, I was an amateur, was never going to be in the Saturday night main event. But in qualifying, jumping a triple, a guy had stalled his bike on the landing. So to avoid landing on him, I came up short and fractured 5 vertebrae.
Oh.
Jeez. And that was, I might have done 1 or 2 more races after that, but just realized that like at that age and with a family, I was no longer invested.
What was the time gap from giving up motocross to getting into mountain biking?
Roughly a year.
Okay. So just a year off to just recover and get back to normal health and...
Well, I went back to work. I was an underground coal miner at the time, and I went back to work 2 days later.
Did you really?
With 5 broken vertebrae?
Yeah, it was just the job I had at the time. The disability insurance wasn't that great, and so I knew I had to continue working to pay bills. So
that's amazing.
I'm assuming you knew you broke it when you landed, but like, tell me about. I'm just curious about that. Like, or maybe you didn't. Like,
no, I didn't.
You didn't know.
So that was in practice. And my wife now, we were just dating at the time.
Okay.
But she came up to see me, and I was like, yeah, I wrecked. I think I pulled a muscle or done some damage. Like, it really hurts. And I was like, I don't think I can go out and do qualifying. And she was like, we didn't drive all the way up here, and you've not been practicing doing all this work to not try.
Yeah.
And then after qualifying, she found me, like, in tears up in the hallway of Rep Arena. It was like, something is wrong. And so we got to the hospital, and that's when they told me.
Wow.
What went through your head when they tell you, like, he broke 5 vertebrae? Because that's crazy. Like,
yeah, I was kind of in shock because I assume you break your back, you're paralyzed, you can't move, you can't walk. But it was T1 through T6, so it was between my shoulder blades.
Oh, okay.
Which is not as bad. And it was
like your lower lumbar?
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
And there was no actual spinal damage, like nerves and stuff. So, yeah, I was more in shock and kind of like, I don't know if this is true. Like, I walked all the way in here. Like, I had no issues. But, yeah, no, it was crazy. And that's what got me into cycling, though. After a year of, other than work, not doing any physical activity, like, mentally, I had to find something.
Yeah.
Do you find, I would think coming from motocross where you're doing massive jumps and crazy acrobatic stunts, do you find getting on a mountain bike boring? I'm like that
true.
Does not sound as adrenaline rushing.
Yeah, no, getting into mountain biking, there was always that drive of like, I got to find a gap, I got to find some jumps. But then, like, I was already at the age, and now I'm 41, but I was just like, I'm old enough now. If I wreck and get hurt and miss work, like, that's not good. Like, I still miss the adrenaline side of it, and often wish that I was back racing motocross, but I at least have a level head now to know, like, no, it's not worth the risk.
You probably, if you've ever crashed your mountain or your road bike, you're like, this is nothing. Like,
you would think that, but no, I think
maybe the older you get, the harder the falls and more impact.
The recovery is much worse. Like, when I go skateboarding now, I'm like, nope, I'm just riding around in the pool. I'm not doing anything. And
okay.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite skater growing up? I skateboarded and I was never that good, but did it with buddies and loved it. But yeah, I was never the type to actually do, jump stairs and do those other things. Like, I always envied those guys, but
yeah, probably Vallely or Musk.
Oh, okay.
So I was in that like late 90s generation.
So back to mountain biking. So when you made that switch, tell me a little bit about, like, you had friends that were into mountain biking, and then from there you just felt like, hey, these guys are doing it. I like this. Like, tell me, did you mountain bike for how long before? Because now you're a race director, but like, what did you always dabble with road biking at all in that mix? Or tell me about your journey from mountain biking to like even road racing.
It was like a lot of quick, short transitions because I started out on a Walmart mountain bike, which all know is a disaster. And I was like every 3 weeks going to Walmart to get a new bike.
Oh, no way.
And I was like, I'm spending way too much money. And at the time, I didn't know enough to like research a local bike shop. The guys that I rode with, they were on like 80s and 90s, like full rigid mountain bikes. They didn't know.
Yep.
And so I was at a yard sale and found this old like 80s Raleigh. I want to say it's a super record, I believe. I could be wrong. But anyway, it was an old Raleigh's road bike, but the drivetrain was shot. So I found a single speed wheel set on like eBay or somewhere. And so essentially then I started riding single-speed road bikes around Owensboro and Western Kentucky. And from there, on YouTube and the internet, found out about cyclocross.
Oh, okay.
And then got super interested in cyclocross, but all the gravel farm roads is where I would ride to avoid traffic. And so this was 2013, so it was before gravel really blew up.
Yeah.
And people were like, "You're crazy. Why are you riding on these gravel roads?" And I couldn't convince a lot of people to ride with me. And that's how I got into race directing, is putting on cyclocross races in this little town in southern Indiana. And so, like, I bounced around from all different.
So you've done it. You've done all the disciplines then.
I did all the disciplines in like a 2-year period, just because like I would have a really crappy bike and it would break down.
So you just gotta get
and I would
something
find
new.
another crappy bike, but it was like a specialized tri-cross where it had like cyclocross tires, but it was more of a road bike. And I'd be like, well, I'm just going to do metrics on gravel roads. This
will work.
Yeah.
I just imagine you showing up to Walmart and they're like, "This guy's here again." Hey, Gary.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I do feel like at one point they were like, "You can't continue to return these bikes. Like, you're obviously abusing them." And I will say, at the time, I probably shouldn't have been mountain biking on a big box store bicycle. I was like 240 pounds.
Okay.
And, you know, over years of cycling, I dropped a lot of weight. But, yeah, at the time, like, I probably would have destroyed any bike.
Yeah.
So you were 240 when you started.
Yep.
What are you? I mean, because you don't look 240 at all. Like, so.
I bounce between 195, 200.
Okay, so
awesome.
that's awesome. So is that all just from riding, or did you do any dietary changes, or?
No, and I've always fluctuated. I try not to be too strict on my diet. In the last 3-4 months, me and my wife have started to focus more on like whole foods and healthier options, but not for any particular reason other than it just tastes better.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So
mean, I ate Wendy's on the way up. So.
No problem with that.
Yeah.
So just 45 pounds just from riding.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm curious about when you've historically been like just smoking. I mean, that's an interesting contrast between that and like cycling a lot. So you would cycle and smoke, and just tell me about, like, did you feel the effects of, you know, both when you would do either one? Because
at the time, I didn't notice the effects. I didn't think about it. I just assumed I was older, I was out of shape, so I struggled more. And throughout, up until the last few months, no matter if it was a race or just a group ride, I smoked while I was riding. I would stop at a gas station to get water and light up a cigarette before we took back off. In 2014, I decided to like do a mountain bike racing series. And I did quit smoking for about 3 months and didn't notice any changes in my performance or how I felt. And so I just picked it back up. I was like, well, it doesn't make a difference.
I see.
And so in that moment, I thought, well, you know, people say smoking hinders athletic performance, but I don't see it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So then what made you because you've just recently quit now, right?
Christmas, so say a little over 3 months.
Okay. So what made you at Christmas time decide this is it?
Be honest with you, it was the smell of cigarettes.
Okay.
They stink, they're gross. And then the expense. You know, when you're spending $40, $50 sometimes a day on a bad habit, you really think about it and you're like, you know, this probably isn't such a good idea. And I have started to see the positive health impacts now that I've quit this time.
Okay. So just slower at first to see it, but now you're really noticing the difference.
Yeah, I'm going to say for the first couple of weeks, month, not really a noticeable change. Going into the second month, I thought I could see a difference. Now, being on the trainer inside, I could definitely see a difference in my heart rate.
Okay.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So
go into that a little. I want to know more about this. I'm curious.
Yeah, so let's say when I was smoking, if I was trying to do a zone 2 ride on the trainer, in my 5-minute warm-up, my heart rate would already be at zone 2 before I ever hit zone 2 power.
Okay.
Now, once I got into my zone 2 power, it would stay steady for, I'm going to say, an hour. Then after that first hour, it would start not creeping up, but raising up significantly. Getting into the hour and a half of zone 2, I was in my tempo heart rate. Now, and I would say, it's hard to say because of training, but I've been doing this for almost 2 years now. So now at my training, like a lot of times I'm 30, 45 minutes into zone 2 power before my heart rate is in zone 2. And so I can do that zone 2 for much longer. And then when I go, let's say I'm going to do anaerobic efforts, whether it's 30 seconds or whatever it is, often I can do multiple intervals, 30 on, 30 off, before I ever actually see that zone 5, zone 6 heart rate, which was like unheard of before.
Yeah.
Normally I would say I was doing a 5-minute threshold effort, I would already be at zone 6 heart rate.
I see.
The last few weeks, we've been talking a lot on here about heart rate and indoor training. I never really thought about it from a really health standpoint, the benefits of being on the trainer to really track that data. Mm-hmm. Because when you're outside, you're not able to look at your computer. You're looking at potholes and turns and deer and squirrel, whatever. But that's really interesting that you can focus and really just kind of have that and see it.
That is where I started noticing the change in myself after not smoking. And it kind of gave me a little bit of joy of being like, oh man, I'm seeing some improvements. I've quit smoking. Things are going in the right direction. But then I started to notice that my muscular ability was what was holding me back over my cardiovascular ability, and that kind of hurts your feelings a little bit. But you know, that's why we all train and we ride.
Yeah. So I'm curious about, like, tell us a little bit about how you got into, so you were doing cyclocross, you were doing gravel, and it sounds like you kind of started it based off of just wanting to have people ride with you. But tell me, is that how you got into race directing? Like, tell me how that first race came about where you're like, hey, I'm going to start putting these events on, and like, I want people to come and do this with me.
Yeah, honestly, all of my race director ventures, fun, has came from moving to a new place where I don't know a lot of people. Cycling is like my passion. It's what occupies my mind to keep me from going crazy. And so always wanting to meet people to share that with. I do love a solo ride, but it's always better when you got some friends and you can cut up. I'm a really wacky, goofy guy, so I love to have people to chit-chat with and to goof off with.
Love it.
So I was in this really small town in Indiana, had a good group of friends, but they were more from hanging out at the bar and stuff like that, and was like, where are some local cyclocross races? Could not find any within, say, a 3-hour drive. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to put a race on and see how many people show up. And much like the races I'm doing now, like really grassroots, I was going out with like yard stakes, hammering them into the ground, and just using caution tape from Lowe's to mark off a course.
Love it.
And I mean, we might have had 15 people at the first race.
Yep.
But I enjoyed it so much that I could have cared less about the turnout or the money. It was just bringing these people together to enjoy the hobby we all love. And while it's competitive, it's still that camaraderie and fun, and you know, as much as you want to beat the guy next to you, at the end of the day, like, you're like, hey, let's go have a beer afterwards. And you know, so it's all about building community.
I love that. Okay. So how long did you do that for? Like with cyclocross to now, were you doing that all the way up to the KORRS?
No, with work, I've moved around a lot.
Okay.
So I was in Southern Indiana, started that series, and after 2 years, it got big enough. It became sanctioned with USA Cycling.
Love it.
It became a tri-state series, so we had races in Western Kentucky, Southern Indiana, and then in the northern part of Kentucky, and then I think it was Southern Ohio.
Okay.
It's been a few years.
Yep.
And then, so we had multiple race directors in different places, and it was just all part of what we called the Kentuckiana Cyclocross Series. But then I got a job offer, moved to Lexington, Kentucky. There, I started hosting Alley Cats and more of the punk rock street races, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And then, of course, now I'm in Carlisle, which is about an hour north of Lexington. So I lost that crew of people, and now I'm building a new community.
Do the races after you leave, do they continue? Like, do new directors take them on and kind of run with it?
They did for a while. I don't think they are happening anymore.
Okay.
Unfortunately, like, I love cyclocross. I think it's a great discipline of racing. But it had like a few years where it just kind of died off. And I don't know if it was the explosion of gravel. I'm not sure. I do know it is picked up and it's becoming real popular again. But I think during that lull in the sport, or maybe those people just drifted over and doing more gravel, because there are gravel races there now.
This could be a hot take. Is cyclocross coming back? And is it killing gravel?
I kind of wish.
Gravel is, I don't think I will ever, maybe I'll do a gravel race one day, but just nothing about it entices me. I like going fast. I like being on the road, and cyclocross is interesting to me because I was a cross-country runner, so it looks like a cross-country course but on a bicycle. So I'm like, that's cool, but then I just can't figure out gravel.
I think they're both great. Personally, I love the adventure part of gravel racing, and it depends which race you go to. Now, if it's buttery smooth, like essentially dirt pavement, to me that's not as exciting. But if they're throwing in ATV trails and like washed out roads where you got big chunky boulders, or say even some double track that you got to navigate through, that kind of stuff I find exciting.
Okay.
Yeah.
But for me, cyclocross is much like a crit race, where you've got the crowd, you've got people doing beer hand-ups. It's a big party with bicycle racing in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why I like this so much.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
a lot easier to have that community, fun party atmosphere with cyclocross and crit racing.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that does. So tell me, so obviously with the Kentucky Open Road Race Series, tell us about that, man, because, this is really exciting for us as we're first-time racers getting into this. We're excited to be able to participate in these races, but tell us about this. Tell us, tell everybody about like what you're doing and these races coming up.
Yeah, so kind of during the end of the pandemic, I bought a little farm in Carlisle, Kentucky, a very rural farm country area, between, let's say, Lexington and Maysville, Kentucky, if people know those locations. Didn't really know anybody there, but I still work in Lexington, so I go into the bike shops and I'd build up like this all-road adventure rig. I was like, I'll just start doing some bike packing, some ultra-endurance solo stuff, and met the guy that owns Turtleback Ridge Brewery.
Okay.
And he was telling me he was into mountain biking and he had done the cross Kentucky route. And so started hanging out with him at the brewery, and I just pitched him an idea. I was like, dude, let's get a bunch of cyclists out here and do a ride. And he was all about it and supported the idea. So we hosted what we called at the time Farmhands 40. It was a 40-mile route. People had the option of doing just a ride, and then we had competitive classes.
Okay.
And, my goal was, let's get 20 people out here. We'll all ride. We'll come back to the brewery. We'll have some beers. We'll have some food. It'll be a great time. And I think we ended up with like 73 people that day.
Holy cow.
That's awesome.
And so, so like afterwards, he came to me and he's like, what do you think? I was like, dude, this was way more than I ever expected. I was like, everybody was super chill. Nobody complained. Like,
Yeah.
I think we did have awards for the competitive classes, but maybe it was like beer coasters. I don't remember exactly. But like
That's
nothing
awesome.
formal. We
Yeah.
had no official podiums, no backdrops, no.
Sure.
And then so I talked to him. I was like, hey, man, let's try like a full-on racing series. Let's just do 4 races spread out through the year, see how it goes. And so that would have been last year.
Okay.
And so like our first race, there was like 45 people, and so I was like, maybe this isn't going to work. It's it's really expensive to put on a bicycle race, especially when you're talking a 50, 60-mile route.
Yeah.
Then by the second race, the numbers had like doubled.
Wow.
And so, you know, and it's through the course of a full year. So it was like really spread out. We would get a lot of new riders, and then people that had raced the previous 2 races weren't showing up. And so I was trying to figure it out. And it was because we were competing with the summer gravel races. We were competing with the fall cyclocross series. And after talking to like your all's coach and some of the other elite athletes are like, yeah, road seasons are kind of a spring, early summer event. And so this year we have really focused on a traditional road racing season with just 4 races. But we have worked with USA Cycling to be sanctioned so people get national points, they get upgrade points. We've worked with Indiana Kentucky Cycling, which is the governing body for Indiana and Kentucky races, and it is blown up into something that I would have never expected.
Yeah.
What type of so you start and you're hoping to get 10 and you get 73. So how did you get the word out or promote that, or how did 73 people that you weren't anticipating find out about this and show up? Because that's kind of what sparks the whole inspiration for it, right?
Yeah, and it was crazy. That first event, I don't think I even printed flyers or posters. So I had Instagram and Facebook event page maybe. I didn't have a Facebook group at the time. But through Bike Reg, people can just look for events happening within a radius. And honestly, I think it was just people, there was a desire for events in the region that weren't happening. Still right now, I believe we are the only true road race that happens in the state of Kentucky. And I'm not 100% sure any happen in Ohio. I could be wrong about that.
Someone in Ohio is gonna be like, no, that's not true. Like,
No,
ripping us in the
if
comments.
somebody
Don't know off the top of my head.
knows if somebody knows of one in Ohio, like comment,
Yeah.
let me know, because
Yeah.
like I personally look for races to go to because I can't race the events I host.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like West Virginia, they do national champs now, but I've not been able to find any road races in West Virginia either.
I gotta say, so I was able last year to come to the last one, which was in
It was October.
It was then, yeah, sometime in October. So I remember it being cooler, but what I remember being so, I think a lot of people that, like a lot of our audience, this recreational rider to racer. So people recreationally ride and they enjoy that. I think a lot of people, when they think racing, they get freaked out, like, well, what about cars and traffic and anything can happen out on the course. And what I was so impressed with was the roads that you've selected for the courses are really just like these perfect smaller country roads where it's like the only people that are driving on those roads are people that live there. And and you had really good traffic control at the intersections for if it came into a small town. And I just thought it was done so cool. Like it was just a cool race.
And I'll have to give credit to the volunteers. I just, through the local cycling club, which is Limestone Cycling League out of Maysville, that's who I've connected with and that's who I ride with on a regular basis. Between them and people in the local community, whether it's regulars out at the farm or family members of the farm, very little compensation, so I still call them volunteers. But without those people, we would not have the traffic control, traffic management that we have. Like, I put on these races by myself. Last year I did registration, scoring, podium awards. I did everything.
Wow.
And it's a lot. So without the volunteers helping on course, like, these races would not happen. And if they did, it would be not an ideal situation. And so if anybody ever wants to just take part in the event, see what it's like, hit us a message, email, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, we always will take volunteers. And like I said, we'll compensate you for travel and lunch, but it's more about getting people involved, building that community.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of volunteers that are cyclists, but they've enjoyed watching the racers come through the intersections more than if they were out there themselves.
What's your greatest joy in putting on races? Is it building the community?
Yeah, for me, so the brewery has become my second family. I live in a very rural area. I mean, the population of Mount Olivet, where we host the races, is 385 last year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So our races can possibly bring in more people than what there is population in that town.
That's crazy.
So finding that community at the brewery of like-minded, fun people that I like to spend my time with, and then bringing more people into that is, and seeing people like come out there and enjoy those country roads, enjoy the food at the brewery, and whether it's a craft soda or the maple syrup they make on the farm.
Yep.
I'll be honest with you, I could care less about the results. If it were up to me, I wouldn't even score the races. The competitive part is fun, especially amongst friends and people you know, but that's the least important part of the event for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm curious, because we're obviously new to racing, and you've been race director for 10 years, just in any, whether it's cyclocross or even road racing, things like that, like, what do you think the biggest mistake you typically see guys, gals who show up for an event for the first time? Maybe this is their first race, or they're just getting into it. What do you think the biggest mistake you see them make?
I would say it's a combination of confidence and high expectations.
Oh, wow.
Because people will come in with a lack of confidence, feel like they're not worthy to be out on the race course. They don't fit the standard racing cyclist that they see on the internet or in their hometown. And that's like the most inaccurate thing you could ever think. I understand why someone would feel that way. I felt that way before. But the races are totally welcoming to anybody, everybody.
Yep.
I would say 99.9% of the people you're going to meet at the race, if you ask them a question, they'll do whatever they can to help you.
Yeah.
I've seen people pull wheels out of their vehicles to give to somebody else because they had a tubeless tire that was flat and there was no way to get it going without a tube. But then high expectations.
Yeah.
Somebody that is not a regular in the group riding scene or training scene, maybe they're riding solo or just riding with a handful of friends, and they're the strongest rider. They show up to their first race expecting whether it's a top 3, a top 10. That's not always attainable. So I always tell people, come in with the idea of, I'm going to set a personal best. Don't worry about how everybody else does. Worry about how you do. Whether, if you don't watch power, heart rate, any of that data, that's fine. Set a time goal. Look at the course, look at the elevation, and be like, I think I can tackle this course in this amount of time. And make that your goal. Because I try to tell people, when you get into racing, and if you're taking it seriously, give yourself about 3 years before you plan on being on the podium. You may get lucky, show up to a smaller event where the competition isn't as high, and get a podium. I've done it myself. Feels great.
Yeah.
But show up to a race when you've got 30, 40 people or more in your category. The likelihood of you finishing in that top 3, top 5 is pretty low. And even if you look at a World Tour cyclist, the hardest thing you can ever do at a bicycle race is win. Most pros, if they win one race, one stage, that's their lifetime achievement.
Yeah.
Even like winning a stage of the Tour de France where you're just like...
that they're set for life. Their career is set. That will forever be stage whatever winner at the Tour.
And so it's trying to get people in that mindset of like, these are all about personal goals, personal gains. And so my first mountain bike race, I didn't even finish. It was a disaster. I had no clue what I was getting myself into. But I'm also of a mindset, I was just there to have fun. So I didn't care. It was a cool challenge, and I was like, I can't wait to go back and try again. My first crit race, I got pulled maybe 5-10 minutes into the race. And, kind of sucks to get pulled from a race that you paid to do.
That's right.
But I was like,
Been
okay.
there. Been there.
Yeah.
I was like, now I know what to expect. Does that mean I show up to crit races now and get on the podium? No.
Yeah.
My goal is to see how long I can stay on that lead lap.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
If I get 25 minutes on the lead lap before I get pulled, like, I'm tickled.
Yeah. Well, I imagine too, and I think this will be interesting as it plays out for us this year too, especially for me, trying to get into like crit racing and, seeing if that could be the area that I maybe focus on, but I think I wonder if there's a lot of people that could be like me, and maybe you've seen this too, to where it's like, we're not going pro, and most people are never going to go pro. And yet there's this, everybody who's typically showing up to these races, somewhat competitive, like naturally competitive. That's why you're there. You enjoy it. But then there's also this element of just remembering to not, forgetting to not have fun, forgetting that it's like, we're out here because we love this sport. We're out here, and I'm just mentally thinking about like the element of like, at the end of the day, I'm super competitive and I want to do my absolute best at anything I'm doing. The challenge is I forget to enjoy it sometimes, and I forget to be like, man, I've got, it's like, I'm not going to go pro, and so I'm like, I know that like at the end of the day, I'm like, man, this is just fun. It's fun. It's a blessing to be out here. It's amazing to be out here with guys and gals that are just like, we all love this sport the same, and it's just like, we're just out here trying our best to, and it's like, I just wondered if you've seen that a lot too with guys and gals where they just get over focused on the results and then end up being like, you kind of forgot to like, the best part of this is you're still riding a bike and racing with buddies and, in this really awesome, event.
That's always my main objective, is to make people or try to get people to understand where you've got to balance the fun and the competitive edge. Yeah. I've got some good friends who are super strong and would absolutely crush me at a race, but they won't go to races because they say the pressure of results, the anxiety they get from thinking about the competition and not doing well prevents them from going.
Yeah.
And I've encouraged some. They've went with me to some races, and we all did terrible, but we had a great time hanging out in the parking lot before and after.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they were like, oh, okay, I see it. Like, yeah, I could do some more events like this. This was fun.
Yeah.
And so it's, people come in with too little confidence or too high of expectations.
Yeah.
Those are my two takeaways that I see from new cyclists.
Yeah.
Where would you like to see, what is your dream, or, because it seems like KORRS is growing.
Yes.
Like definitely from last year to this year, and getting USAC involved. Where in your mind would be like, I'd love to get it to this point? Or do you not just want to ride the wave and see where it goes? Or do you have a destination of, this would be awesome if we could get this?
I try not to set high goals for the series, because just like a race, I don't want to get disappointed, frustrated. More than anything with being a race director, I don't want to dig myself a financial hole that I can't climb out of, and then the races not happen at all. So I do take it in stride. If this year goes good, if we can break even on the races, then hopefully next year I would like to start expanding the races. So it's the Kentucky Open Road Series. However, all the races take place at the same location, different courses, but same start finish line, same host venue every race. So I would like to see that grow and expand to other parts of Kentucky where it's truly the state of Kentucky's road racing series.
Have you done anything with the Kentucky Century Challenge before?
I've done the rides. Multiple times I've signed up for the challenge, and I've never completed all the centuries.
Okay.
Just a busy life.
But that's kind of the idea you're going for then, just setting up local races where they can do the hosting, but you can do the directing, managerial, just coordinating to the towns.
That is the idea. That's
Okay.
like, that would be the perfect situation. Somebody who wants to be a race director, promote a race, do all of that. I just tie it in with my series So, of course, I don't have that financial risk. Not that there's ever any financial gains with a race, but if somebody was the race director, they could make money on it. So for me, it's all about just growing the sport, growing that community. And so if I can spread that across the entire state, that would be like the best thing that could happen.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Well, and let me just ask you one last question before we move into our next segment of cycling trends. So just tying the bow here between, you, as you said, you've stopped smoking, and I just am curious, like, where would you love to see your fitness and health go, like, moving forward? And then what would you say to anybody else who maybe is struggling with their physical health and maybe have had similar experiences where they're like, maybe they're trying to kick a habit, but they can't quite get out of it? Like, what would you say to somebody, in that?
Yeah. So personal goals, I'm 41. I'm never going to be anything more than just an amateur. I don't even know I'll ever get to the master's level of cycling. I might be the master's age, but I'll probably never be at that fitness level. But if I can get a result, whether it's a top 10, top 20 in a Cat 5 race, I'll be thrilled.
Okay.
I have some Kentucky races, War Daddy, we had talked about prior to starting recording. I do that race every single year. I know I will never podium, but my goal is to improve my time every year. This year, if I can do a 6 hour or less time, I will feel like I've won a stage in the Tour de France.
Let's go.
End all goals, one day I would like to do a 5 hour.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I just want to keep improving on myself. Speed, power, it's all fun. But for me, it's just to constantly improve on my personal goals, personal best.
Yep.
If it's a 5-minute climb on a local route, I want to do it in 3 minutes over the next 3 years.
Yeah.
No set stone goals. But as far as people who have, whether it's a smoking addiction like I had, all addictions are different. So I tread lightly. I'm no way a psychologist, doctor, anybody that can give but it's like you have to want it. I've quit smoking numerous times for 3 weeks, a month, 3 months, but I never wanted to quit. It was always, I'm going to quit, see what this does. See if
I should quit, or someone told me I should quit. Okay.
It's like, okay, if I quit smoking, I'll improve my time to failure on a 20-minute hill climb. But that's not a good enough reason. I had to look at, personally, I'm done with this habit. It's nasty. It's not good for me. It's too expensive. I could get a new set of wheels next year.
Yeah.
So it's like,
that's the deeper why, is to get in that. No, it's true. Yeah.
And physically, the addiction, you've got to find ways to work around that.
Yeah.
I had a really bad issue with drinking soda, as silly as that may sound.
Oh, it doesn't sound silly to me at all.
Yeah.
And that was a hard one to stop.
Yeah. And
that was it's just unhealthy. It's not good for you. It didn't affect my cycling performance. But, I'm sure the extra sugar, chemicals, whatever. But yeah, so it's like, you just have to want it.
Yeah.
And then use your friends and family for support. If you tell somebody hey, this isn't good, I've got to stop, they're going to support you. They're going to help you.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's the want to.
Yep.
And, and I tell people all the time that I know that smoke or do other things, if you don't want to quit, don't. Because it's not going to work out. If you don't want to, you're wasting your time.
But so before we move on to the next segment, we have to talk about KORRS, and because I'm hoping that this really people watch this and go,
you need
okay,
to
I'm not signed up. I want to sign up now.
Yes.
So if you're not signed up, you're doing 2 of them. One of them?
Yes, probably 2. Yep.
I know I'm doing 2 for sure. I think I'm going to be able to do. It's all about the schedule.
Y'all might be wanting to do 3 after our discussion
Listen,
earlier.
well, I'm for
want
sure
to.
2.
My wife is. We've had this funny balance of like, here's the races that I'm going to do, and we were like, okay, we're on the same page. And then if I start throwing in new ones, I'm like, I'll get myself into trouble. But I definitely want to.
Now, we'll say our races are great to bring your family to.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know.
Because the family farm,
Yeah.
camping, we're 3 miles from the state park with a lodge and a pool.
See, I'm just not selling it right.
I didn't know any of this existed
You
down
can
there.
actually stay at the lodge. They've got the restaurant, they've got the small bar, and all the hiking trails, the river, all of that.
Yeah.
And you can actually bike from the lodge to the start-finish line. It might not even be 3 miles. I mean,
We got to get the families to do this.
I didn't know any of this existed.
if you go to our website, we have a list of Airbnbs, different places that host camping on their farms. There's a treehouse resort that's maybe 7-8 miles from where the races are.
We have not been selling this correctly at all to
Oh,
our
man.
wives. This sounds awesome.
Yeah, like you can make a really cool weekend out of it.
No, yeah, for sure. And now, also, I do want to say that for those that sign up and listen to the podcast, if you go to the website and use the code Bespoke15, you get 15% off
Yep.
at registration. So that's BESPOKE15 to get 15% off. So come join us. I think I'm gonna do 3. I really do.
Yeah. I need
Now-
to do more now that I know
If
even
I
more.
can,
Pitch.
now,
Yeah, we got to
they
get all 4.
They get 15% off when they register. But they're also getting entered into a chance to win that 2025
yes.
Cannondale.
Please,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, Super 6 Evo.
How did this happen with this race? That's so cool.
So, N+1 Bikes, bike shop in Louisville, Kentucky,
Oh, yeah.
they support every local cycling event you can imagine.
And you said Louisville?
Yes,
Okay, from Carlisle to Louisville, that's quite a hike.
it's about 2 hours.
Okay.
So, granted, I don't go to their shop. I don't spend money with them. I think they're all great people, and I love their products. But it's a 2-hour drive for me. But their shop owner contacted me and really wanted to support the series and went above and beyond what I would have ever asked. And so the bicycle that'll be given away at the end of the series in August is just a part of what they're doing to support us.
That's amazing.
And to me, that is a huge.
So you're doing the drawing at the end,
So
and for every race you do,
your name gets put into the.
so if you do all 4, you get 4 potential,
Yes.
4 chances or 4
Yep.
more chances.
And if you volunteer at the races, whether it's helping with check-in, helping on course, your name gets entered into that drawing. So let's say you and your wife wanted to get away for the weekend. She wants to be on course, help with traffic to see you race. That's 2 entries.
Ooh, this is big time.
Now, there's some tricks on really racking up the
no,
opportunities.
yeah, this is stuff that we have not thought about how to sell our wives. I'm going to be like, Jess, you really need to watch this week's episode. All right. So one of the things that we do on our show is called Cycling Trends of the Week. And basically we look at things that have happened in the world of cycling that we talk about. So one of them that happened this week is Wout van Aert and Visma Lease Bike raced a road race in time trial helmets.
Yep.
What do you think about that?
Every watt matters. I've seen some of this, but it is interesting to think at the very top end of the sport, these teams that have every possible chance to shave off, any sort of, or get every sort of advantage they possibly can for every single one of their riders. The helmets is another way. And I think they're always, what I think is fascinating is just these teams are constantly testing things.
Yeah.
And just being like, hey, test out these helmets. See if, I think they said in this that like, obviously it helps give them a little bit of a slight advantage in terms of just that I don't know how many watts, but just the watts they saved from just these specific helmets. But
well, before I saw the picture, at first when I saw the title, I thought it was those like Spaceballs, Darth Vader looking helmets that they wear. And
Did you see those last year in the Tour de France?
Oh, yeah.
Those are insane.
And I was like, there's no way they're doing a road race with those things. And then I looked and I was like, okay, it's a very traditional.
Yeah.
Here's what I wonder about it though. So one, we know that aero helmets do not vent as well because they're trying to move air around, not trap it in the helmet and not cool your head. So they get hotter. I wonder if they're going to be doing that when it's July in the middle of the summer during the tour and it's crazy hot out, or if they're going to kind of, it makes sense right now because it's kind of spring classics. It's cooler.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm curious to see when we get to the tour if they're like, oh yeah, let's keep going with this, or kind of go back to a more traditional venting helmet.
Well, when I was looking at those, they don't look a whole lot different from the new like Aero road helmets.
Okay.
And so I was curious because they almost look like a hybrid between a road and a time trial helmet.
Yeah.
They're not your traditional elongated time trial helmet.
Yep.
Have you seen, I've looked and I can't find any like actual specs on those helmets.
I haven't yet, no.
Because I would be curious if they've not designed this new like extra aero road helmet. I don't know. I'm just curious.
I remember when they came out with the really stupid looking glasses last year. You remember
the nose piece?
Yes,
the Aero nose?
The Aero nose. And I was like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
I know.
And then I saw Cavendish and I was like, oh, man,
He was rocking them too. I didn't see Cap.
I think he was rocking them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Jasper rocks them or was rocking them last year.
Yeah. He's your favorite rider too.
Okay.
Well, it is interesting just to think that, from a team perspective, they're just trying to always figure out like, can we save a couple watts here? Can we do anything here with this? And it's like, it's just incredible to think that like for most people out there racing, it's like watts matter, but to that nth degree, will they matter for most people? No. But for these guys, they will. And it's incredible.
Well, I think it goes to show what we've been talking about this whole time is cycling is such an interesting sport where the recreational rider, the racer who's never going to go pro, tries all these things. But in reality, it's more, they could probably make some adjustments to their health or their lifestyle to really get the big gains.
Yeah.
So, you're a perfect testament of that. You were like, well, I've stopped smoking and I can see my heart rate drastically improving when I'm in the trainer working out. And I'm like, how many people could probably lose a couple pounds or eat healthier food or make all these adjustments, but they put so much money into these things that are going to get them 1 watt when, there's other gains to be made that are much easier to obtain and healthier to obtain.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and then the second thing that happened this week was, I'm not going to say the full name because I don't know how to pronounce it, but Umloop at Nieuwsbild. I tried it anyway. So the women's race that took place in Ghent, Belgium, it's about 138 kilometers of race. Lottie Klaas wins the race, outsprinting Aurelia Norello. But what I thought was fascinating about this was, so in a 138 kilometer race, they were away from everybody else in that race from the first 10 kilometers of that. I think that's crazy.
Was it just those two?
Yeah.
Like just those two went off?
Well, I think they went off and there was like with a group, and then eventually they just separated completely.
So they attacked at 10 kilometers in, not 10 kilometers away from the finish.
No, yeah. So first 10 kilometers, those two were like gone.
Wow.
And I think that's crazy because you're just like, wow, that's a lot of time to be on your own. And at the very end, they were battling it out. The last like clip of them just coming into the sprint, you could just see it. It was just like, they're just, absolutely gassed. But it was incredible to think that like they had put so much time away from everybody else in the pack. And I think third place still had like 3 minutes on them or something like that. So yeah, it was
Holy
a lot.
cow, that's impressive.
Is it just me, or is it the women's races are always more interesting and like not chaotic, but there's more going on?
Yeah.
It does. I agree, and it's nice that the women's coverage is getting more coverage because some women's sports are not as entertaining for me to watch. But I do feel like even women's cycling, I find it really I really enjoy it, and I'm glad it's getting so much more coverage because I agree with you. They're very entertaining races.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just incredible. I mean, top end athletes. But I thought it was really cool. All right, so now we're gonna jump into our segment of rapid fire. So, just first, we're jumping right into it. First road bike you ever owned? Do you remember?
Univega Super 10. It was really 27-inch, 10 speed. I was 11 years old, maybe.
Okay.
Oh, I love it. Okay.
Yard sale find.
Nice. Current road bike.
Trek Damani.
Okay.
It's the SL6. It's a couple years old.
Yeah,
but nicest bike I've ever owned.
Okay. Dream bike? Is that it, or?
No. It's probably not what anyone would think, but the squid bikes, if you're familiar with those.
No.
Squid bikes, no. Tell me about it.
So it's a hand-built bike by a company out of California, but they do a fixed gear, so a track lacrosse build.
Oh, okay.
But it's custom painted and all that stuff, like very punk rock kind of.
Is it carbon, titanium? Steel. Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh,
steel guy.
Yeah.
We know a
Nice.
guy who rides steel, and
I love steel.
Our coach rides steel.
yeah.
I don't on the road because I'm already a big guy, so I want to save as much weight as I can.
Yeah.
But like my mountain bike is steel.
I mean, I've heard that they are just such a comfortable riding experience.
Yes.
They're so smooth.
Okay.
Are you so when you're training, are you a morning guy, an afternoon guy, or an evening guy to get out and ride?
Weekdays, evenings, weekends, early morning.
Okay.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Now, do you enjoy getting out early mornings on the weekends? Or is that just when you find other guys and gals that you're like, hey, everybody else is riding this time?
I prefer an early morning ride just with a farm and work through
You,
the week.
you
it
and
makes it
Josh
hard.
would just get along so well.
Like if I can start a ride as soon as the sun comes up enough to not need lights, I'm good.
Oh, okay.
Seriously, you two were just made to be riding together in the morning.
Well, yeah, you said evenings on the weekdays, though, right? That's your preference? Okay.
It works out better with farm and work.
Got it.
Do you find I imagine, is that even happening right now, like outside in the evenings or inside?
It depends on what's going on the farm. If there's daylight, outside.
Okay.
But yeah, once it gets dark, just being in such a rural area, I don't feel comfortable being on the roads.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But traffic pretty...
Oh, traffic's great. It's just, it would be a big surprise to a local farmer to come up on me on a single lane road on a bicycle and probably not expecting it. So
Okay.
I'd just assume ride the trainer if it's dark and not worry about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, and then your favorite race you've ever done?
War Daddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So give people a little more context on this particular ride. We were talking about it before the show, but like give a little bit more context on this.
Okay, so War Daddy is what I will call a ultra endurance off-road race.
Yep.
It's not a true mountain bike race. It's not a gravel race. For me, it's important because it's in southeastern Kentucky where I was born and lived the bulk of my life. But also, it's also a community event. The people that host it are amazing people. The campground is at the start and finish line, so everybody's hanging out all weekend. They do a big celebration afterwards with a potluck meal. And it's extremely challenging. 68 miles, 12,000 feet of climbing. And I'm going to say 80% of it is off-road, maybe 90%.
Oh, man.
Oh, my gosh.
For those that are new to it, they do have a shorter 32-mile option.
Yep.
And I think it's about 7,000 feet of climbing. So it's still brutal.
It's a lot.
course.
And this is the one that your goal is 6?
Yes.
Is the same? Okay.
Yeah, I want to do 6 to sub 6.
Okay. What's your best on it again?
The best time's like 7:15. So it's a
Okay.
huge goal.
Yeah.
But that is my goal.
Oh,
Awesome.
dude. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and then for those that, I mean, I have some experience in mountain biking, but it's just like, it's so much different on a mountain bike compared to a road bike. Climbing, it's just,
Yeah.
it
Now,
it feels so much different, and I don't know what it is, but it just like, man, I feel the elevation so much more on a mountain bike, and you're just going slower, and I don't know what it is, but yeah.
Yeah, because you're going to climb 2-mile climbs at an average of 10-12%.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
man.
a long climb.
It's a long climb.
It's a long walk.
Do you feel like mountain biking helps your road bike handling? Do you see a crossover correlation there?
Yeah, I would say like the majority of what little bit of skill I have on the bike has come from whether it was BMX, mountain biking, or like motocross. I think on the last episode they mentioned coming out of Zwift super strong but not having the handling skills. And I encourage people, like, if you can, get a cheap mountain bike from a yard sale or used and go hit your local trails. You don't have to go fast and hard. Get comfortable, because it does make a huge difference in your handling.
Ooh, I like that. That's a great tip.
Yeah, I've never thought of that.
I wish I hadn't sold my mountain bike. That was
Another fun thing to do is, like, especially where you're wanting to do crits,
yeah.
get a older road bike, something you're not too worried about getting dinged up.
Yep.
Get a group of friends, mark off, say a 200-meter crit course in grass.
Mm-hmm.
Start off at a slow speed, 10 miles an hour. Bump shoulders, bump elbows, practice leaning your body weight against each other, and then just slowly build up the speed. And once you get comfortable with that on grass, then you can kind of move that into a parking lot, and that'll get you more comfortable in that tight pack group environment for crit racing.
Ooh,
I love this.
That's a
This
great-
is like inside hacks to crit riding. This is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Do you have any more in there? Like, this is great.
I mean, it's all about building confidence and, technical skill. Like, anybody can spend enough time and get power and be fast. But, like, if you're nervous going into a corner, you're shot out the back right then and there.
Yeah.
And, in the grass, you fall over. It's not that big a deal. That's the reason I say you don't use your nice bike. But
Yeah.
and it just really builds that confidence. Like, you're like, I can go into the corner. If I feel this person getting too close, I know I can shift my weight into them.
Yep.
And I'm not going to go down.
Oh, I like that. Have you ever done that with?
Yeah.
Okay. I
Yep.
love that.
Especially like cyclocross practice. We would have our cyclocross course, and a group of us and we would intentionally ride slow to stay together.
Yeah.
And then we would get to a corner and we would just like lean on each other. And essentially you try to push each other around on the course with your body weight.
Oh my gosh.
And it just gets
I
you
love
more comfortable with that.
That's great.
that. That's such a cool tip. I love that.
Yeah, because, I mean, how many people come in, and I had a conversation with a guy today that is thinking about getting into riding, and he's like, oh man, riding in group rides at high speeds, like that just, I don't know, that makes me really nervous. And I'm like, I guess that is a big, that like I forget that element of,
Yeah, that kind of leap that it takes to just
Yes.
get into that comfortableness
Yes.
of riding with other people that are in close proximity.
Road racing, I've never noticed this, and it's not been a problem because it never gets super crowded. But with the crits, if you got a super high cadence, you'll start to kind of bounce on the saddle, feel your hips rotate. Kind of practice staying where you have a lot of pressure on the pedals, not like a low grinding,
Right.
because then your body stays more planted and you feel more stable. The higher your cadence, the more unstable you feel. And,
okay.
I mean, you got to play around with it and find your
Yeah.
comfort zone and where you're most capable. But that was something I picked up through like gravel racing.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because the higher my cadence, every little bump would almost bring me up off the saddle. And I learned if I had not necessarily a slower cadence, but I had more leverage on the pedals as I was spinning my cranks, I was staying more planted on the bicycle.
I love that tip. Yeah. Because I'm thinking about like a higher cadence and somewhere in that like 90 to 100, somewhere in that mix. But it's also dependent on like, yeah, even dropping down to like an 85 could make a world of difference too.
And
Where
like
it's
that,
still a
it's-
high
yeah.
cadence, but still you might feel it a little bit differently.
Yeah, as long as you got that, you can just feel the leverage and it keeps you planted. I don't understand why.
Yeah.
I can't tell you that.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that tip.
yeah, that's great.
It's a great tip. I love that. All right. Well, thank you, Gary, for coming onto the show, man. We are so grateful. And once again, we are going to link the KORRS, the Kentucky Open Road Race Series in this, but we highly, highly encourage you guys to just sign up for the race and participate in it. And we'd love to hear your stories of personal health transformations, any questions for Gary, and please drop some love for Gary and the Kentucky Open Road Race Series. And we will see you guys next week.
And hopefully at KORRS.
And at KORRS, that's right.
See ya.
See ya. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.